port in the spring of 1941, she was widely regarded as the most elegant and the most dangerous battleship.
The voice drifts out of history, thin and crackling, as though it's echoing through the water itself. Then, silence. 84 years later, the ocean where that story ended lies cold and motionless, nearly 3 miles deep. Through the darkness, an underwater drone begins its descent. Its lights cut through the black water, catching glimpses of drifting particles and fragments of metal scattered across the seabed. Each meter downward reveals how untouched this place is, a landscape frozen since the day the Bismarck fell. Somewhere below waits the wreck of a ship once thought unsinkable.
She would never return. Her name was the Bismarck, and she was about to become a legend.
That legend ended in fire and steel, a duel in the North Atlantic that lasted barely 2 hours, but echoed through generations. The Bismarck vanished beneath the waves with over 2,000 souls, leaving behind one of the most haunting mysteries of the sea. Now, 8 decades later, the world is returning to her grave. The drone's cameras adjust, scanning a lifeless plain of mud and darkness, until something vast begins to take shape ahead. A curved wall of metal rises from the seabed, shrouded in sand and corrosion, yet unmistakably alive with the marks of war. Its hull bears scars that time cannot erase, impact craters, torn steel, the twisted remains of a nation's pride. For the crew watching from above, awe slowly gives way to unease. They came searching for history, but what they're about to find suggests the past hasn't finished speaking. The legend of the Bismarck. When the Bismarck first touched the water in 1939, she represented the pinnacle of naval engineering, a vessel designed not just to fight, but to intimidate. At over 50,000 tons fully loaded and armed with 8 15-inch guns, she was faster, heavier, and deadlier than anything afloat. Her construction was a declaration. Germany was once again a power to be feared on the open sea. To the men who served aboard her, the Bismarck was more than the steel. She was a floating city, complete with bakeries, workshops, and quarters that smelled faintly of oil and coffee. Young sailors wrote letters home describing the feeling of pride that came with serving on her decks. They called her unsinkbar, unsinkable. But the world beyond her hull was changing fast. In the spring of 1941, under orders from Admiral Gunther Lütjens, the Bismarck and her escort ship, the Prince Eugen, slipped quietly from port into the North Atlantic, their mission to intercept Allied convoys and cripple Britain's vital supply lines. It was a high-stakes gamble, one that would define naval warfare for decades. Within days, British intelligence picked up their trail. The Royal Navy scrambled nearly every available ship to hunt her down. For Britain, the Bismarck wasn't just a threat, she was a symbol of humiliation waiting to happen. Winston Churchill himself issued the command that would echo through history: sink the Bismarck. The first encounter came, swiftly. In the icy waters of the Denmark Strait, the Bismarck faced HMS Hood, the pride of the British fleet. At dawn, both ships opened fire. Moments later, the Hood exploded, torn in half by a single devastating shell. More than 1,400 sailors were gone in less than 3 minutes. The Bismarck's victory was absolute and short-lived. Every radar, aircraft, and battleship in the Atlantic now turned toward her. The hunter had become the hunted. Her fuel was leaking, her crew exhausted, her fate sealed long before she reached France. By the time she was cornered on May 27, 1941, the ocean itself seemed to conspire against her. Shells rained down from British guns. Torpedoes tore through her hull, and fires raged below deck. The unsinkable ship was finally sinking. But even in defeat, the Bismarck refused to give her enemies satisfaction. Survivors later swore the crew had scuttled their own ship, a final act of defiance to ensure that no enemy would ever claim her as a prize. Rediscovery and technology. For nearly half a century, the Bismarck remained lost. Her exact resting place unknown, her story frozen somewhere beneath 16,000 feet of North Atlantic darkness. Survivors told their versions. Historians debated whether British torpedoes or German charges sent her down. But the truth, the physical proof, lay far beyond human reach. That changed in 1989. The man who had already found the Titanic, Dr. Robert Ballard, set out on a new mission. His team boarded a research vessel equipped with the most advanced underwater technology of its time to locate the Bismarck and settle one of history's great naval mysteries. They began their search 600 miles west of Brest, France, scanning an area larger than some countries. For days, sonar swept the seabed, painting ghostly outlines of ridges and debris fields. Then late one night, the monitors lit up. A massive, unmistakable shadow appeared on the screen. Cameras were deployed. As the remotely operated vehicle descended, the first images of the wreck flickered into view. Steel plates, gun barrels, the curve of a hull half buried in sediment. There she was, and still upright, perfectly preserved by the freezing water, her swastika markings faintly visible beneath layers of marine snow. Ballard described the moment as solemn. This wasn't a victory, it was a grave. Over 2,000 men still entombed inside. Further inspection revealed something remarkable. Despite the relentless assault during her final battle, the Bismarck's hull remained largely intact. Too intact to have been sunk by gunfire alone. The evidence suggested her own crew had scuttled her, flooding compartments to send her to the bottom before the British could capture her. The discovery reignited debates, but for Ballard, the conclusion was clear. The Bismarck had died on her own terms. The expedition left the wreck untouched, marking it as a war grave. But technology has a way of evolving, and curiosity never stays silent for long. Decades later, a new generation of explorers would return, armed not with submersibles, but with autonomous drones capable of going deeper, staying longer, and seeing in greater detail than ever before. And what those machines recorded would reveal that the ocean had not been as silent as everyone believed. The new drone mission. In the decades since Ballard's expedition, technology has rewritten the limits of exploration. Satellites can now map the seafloor from orbit, and deep-sea drones can descend miles below the surface. No crew, no oxygen, no fear. They move through darkness where human divers cannot survive. In 2024, one such drone, built by a European research collaboration, was sent to revisit the Bismarck. Its mission? Create the most detailed 3D model of the wreck ever captured. For marine engineers, it was a technical challenge. For historians, it was a return to sacred ground. The launch took place under gray Atlantic skies. Waves slapped against the hull of the support vessel as technicians ran final diagnostics. Cables hummed, data streams flickered, and within minutes the drone slipped below the surface, vanishing into the same cold water that had claimed the Bismarck 84 years earlier. As the drone descended, real-time sonar painted a slow, haunting picture. The seabed appeared like a lunar landscape. Ridges, trenches, scattered debris fields stretching into blackness. Every so often, a fragment of history would appear. A torn length of cable, a section of railing, a single boot. The ocean had swallowed everything, but not erased it. 2 hours into the dive, the outline of the Bismarck re-emerged. Vast, silent, and almost unrecognizable beneath the layers of corrosion. Her bow pointed downward, buried deep in the mud, while her stern rose slightly, as if frozen in a final struggle to stay afloat. The main guns were still in place, their barrels tilted toward an invisible enemy, a ghost still ready for battle. Then something unexpected. The drone's sensors began to register anomalies, faint electrical surges flickering across the hull. At first, the team suspected interference from their own equipment, but the readings persisted, pulsing at irregular intervals like a heartbeat beneath the steel. Acoustic microphones picked up faint tapping noises too, rhythmic, deliberate, impossible. Inside the control room, no one spoke. The data stream was stable, but the noises continued, faint metallic knocks echoing through miles of water. One of the researchers muttered that it sounded like hammering, the kind used to seal watertight doors. It was almost certainly coincidence, perhaps sediment shifting or temperature pressure on the hull. But even through the static, the sound carried a pattern, like something within the wreck was stirring after decades of silence. What the cameras revealed. The tapping faded as the drone moved closer. Its lights widened to full beam, cutting through the haze until the wreck filled every corner of the frame. For a moment, the entire control room fell silent. The kind of silence that only comes when everyone knows they're witnessing something few ever will. The Bismarck lay before them, resting upright on the seabed like a monument carved from darkness. Time had peeled away her paint, but her shape was unmistakable. The massive forward guns still pointed toward the unseen horizon, as if defying the ocean that took her. Rust had claimed every surface, but her structure, her bones, remained unbroken. The drone glided past the bow, its cameras capturing details untouched since 1941. Fragments of uniforms, a broken compass, porcelain plates lying where a mess table once stood, the ordinary traces of men who had eaten, laughed, and written home before the world closed over them. Then the drone turned toward the hull breach near midship. It drifted through a jagged tear of steel, its light scattering across twisted beams. Beyond the opening lay a narrow passageway, collapsed bulkheads, coiled wiring, fragments of what looked like machinery frozen mid-motion. For a moment, the drone's floodlights caught something unexpected, a human silhouette, perfectly preserved within the silt, its outline faint but unmistakable. There was no face, no color, only form. The sea had kept its promise, to guard what it takes. Further in, cameras recorded what analysts later called the mirror room. Here, sections of polished metal still reflected faint glimmers of light. It was as if the drone had entered a chamber built of memories, surfaces showing ghostly shapes that vanished the instant the light moved. And then came something stranger still. As the drone advanced, sensors detected a localized heat pocket, impossible at that depth. Infrared imaging showed faint warmth radiating from within a collapsed section of the lower deck. Not fire, not machinery, but a chemical reaction still ongoing after 8 decades, created by trapped metallic compounds reacting slowly with salt water. A process so rare, it had never been documented at this scale. To scientists, it was a discovery worth celebrating, proof that even in death, the Bismarck's structure remained alive, still interacting with the sea that claimed her. But to the crew watching from above, the image carried another meaning. The faint glow, deep within the wreck, looked eerily like a pulse. They realized then, the Bismarck had never truly gone silent. Theories and implications. In the days following the dive, analysts combed through every second of footage. Each frame was cataloged. Every rivet, every torn section of steel, every unexplained anomaly. The images were unlike anything captured before. The clarity, the scale, the condition. It was as if the Bismarck had been waiting to be seen again. Marine. Engineers were fascinated by the hull's resilience. Even after decades of saltwater corrosion, its structure was remarkably intact. They confirmed Ballard's early conclusion: the Bismarck hadn't been sunk by gunfire alone. Her crew had indeed scuttled her, opening valves to flood the ship from within, choosing to die on their own terms. It was an act of loyalty and defiance. But other discoveries were harder to explain. The faint heat signatures recorded near the lower decks suggested ongoing reactions within sealed compartments. Isolated pockets where steel, oxygen, and salt water continued their slow chemical war. In simple terms, the ship was still alive in a scientific sense, decaying not evenly, but in rhythmic cycles, producing small energy surges that could explain the pulse. What sounded like knocking, scientists said, could be nothing more than metal expanding and contracting with temperature shifts at extreme pressure. Still, others weren't convinced. Some members of the research team described feeling a presence near the wreck, an irrational heaviness that filled the control room each time the cameras approached the lower deck. Skeptics called it fatigue, a product of isolation and tension. But for those who had seen the preserved remains, it felt like something deeper, a lingering consciousness of the men who had gone down with their ship. Ethicists weighed in next. Should humanity continue probing war graves in the name of science? Or should these wrecks, entombed with thousands, be left in peace as the sea intended? The debate resurfaced across naval communities and online forums. Was exploration a tribute to history or a disturbance of memory? In the end, even the lead engineer admitted something that stayed with many who watched the dive unfold. You can study it, you can map it, but when you're looking at the Bismarck, you're not observing metal. You're standing at the edge of time. The ocean's memory. The Bismarck rests today where she fell, alone on a silent plain of the North Atlantic, her decks cloaked in silt, her guns forever aimed at the void. No flag flies above her now. No enemy remains. Only the slow breath of the ocean moving through her open corridors. To the living, she's a relic of war, the outcome of pride, strategy, and human ambition. But to the sea, she's simply part of the landscape, another fragment folded into its endless memory. Every rivet, every uniform button, every name lost in the dark has become a thread in the larger story of what the ocean remembers and what it never gives back. 8 decades have passed since the Bismarck's final battle, yet the emotions tied to her haven't faded. She was built to project power, to shape history, and in the end, she taught us how fragile that idea truly is. Steel can defy bullets, but not time. Empires can rule continents, but not the tide. The drone's mission ended. With thousands of hours of footage and data, yet what resonated most wasn't what they found, but what they felt. Down there, in the stillness of the abyss, human triumph and tragedy meet on equal ground. The Bismarck story isn't about victory or defeat. It's about how, even in ruin, we continue to search for meaning in the things we've lost. If stories like this inspire you, make sure to subscribe. Every week, we uncover the real stories buried beneath the sea and time itself. Because somewhere below, the Bismarck still waits. Silent, undefeated, and eternal in the memory of the deep. If this journey moved you, subscribe to Depths Uncovered, where history sleeps beneath the surface, waiting to be found.